It's 24 past 10, a beautiful day in Melbourne. Sun really shining, although we're told to make the most of it. Now, whether that attracts more protesters or not remains to be seen, but certainly they're out and about and we'll keep tabs on that. No great evidence at the moment as to what their tactics might be. But I just wanted to get his take on the situation, and by his, I mean the man who, well, has occupied this chair for some 35 years or so, Neil Mitchell. Neil, welcome back to your own show.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, it's extraordinary times.
Yeah, extraordinary times, but also very sad times when you think that we're probably making history for all the wrong reasons.
We are, and I believe it's more than that. I think we're heading into probably the toughest period in Victoria's history. You look at those figures of the pandemic today, these are the worst figures we've done through the whole pandemic, including last year. And last year we ended up with 800 plus deaths. The next 6 to 12 months, even on the most optimistic modelling, has been very difficult. On the more pessimistic modelling, we've got a lot of death, a lot of illness, and people will be struggling to get treated for other things in hospitals because the hospitals are overwhelmed. So we're heading into this sort of period and we're divided. We're split, we're angry, we're fighting. What we need is a sense of unity, a sense of purpose and some leadership. To get through this, we need every ounce of community focus and goodwill and determination, and we haven't got it. It's quite frightening, this situation. Well,
let's start with the leadership. Now, Daniel Andrews, okay, forget the fact that, you know, he flatly refuses to come onto your program and speak to the public. He really has been conspicuous by his absence throughout this week in particular. Now, I know he did the media conference at 8:25 yesterday, but, I mean, aside from that, he hasn't really been cited, has he?
No, I think what he has been doing has been insipid. I felt for a while he's a bit rattled. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on, but he goes from, you know, being angry, Daniel, and shouting at people one day, and the next day he's got a different approach. He's erratic. Now, you can understand in a sense. He's been through hell with his injury. He's been through an extremely tough year, but he is not leading well. Take politics out of it. I don't care which party they come from. We need leadership. This, quite seriously, the divided community is probably with us long term now, and you've got to bring that community back together, and you've got to try and get us through the next 12 months when to hopefully by that stage we can say, well, we're returning to some sort of COVID normal. I don't know where the leader is. I don't see them at a federal or a state level. Well, let's concentrate on the state because it's our problem. I certainly don't see anybody in the state who's got the ability or the willingness to stand up and be a genuine, fair income leader who actually takes people into their trust, takes people into their confidence, and leads rather than bullies.
I mean, that's pretty bleak, and it's quite depressing to hear that, because where's the hope?
Well, the hope is the people, because I have an overwhelming, as Bob Hawke used to say, I have an overwhelming confidence in the decencies and the resilience of the Victorian people. I really do. And that's the vast majority of people who are listening to us now, not people out in the streets. I mean, what those blokes did yesterday was just was desecration, and it shows they don't care for what this society is built on. And that's the worry. If they're so willing to undermine the society at that level, they're willing to do anything. But the vast majority of people are decent. If they can get the leadership, if they can get the focus, if somebody says, this is what you need to do, this is what we need to do, this is how we get through it. But nobody seems to be doing that. There's, don't go out after 5 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. You know, well, why? I mean, we just need to be trusted and led. I think we can get through it, and we will get through it because we haven't got much option, but it's going to take a long time. But I think decency will win over evil at any time, and I think we will get there eventually.
What about the police action yesterday at the Shrine? How have you summed up the tactics of the police so far this week?
Well, the police have been hot and cold. I feel for them. I think they're in an extremely difficult position, and I think their public confidence in the police is being undermined. I mean, it's Bernie Finn, the Upper House State Liberal MP, who's more conservative than most. He's been tweeting criticism of the police today. He calls them Daniel's militia, or despots of Daniel's militia. Now, when you've got Bernard Finn standing against the police, and he's getting belted for it, and I think it's nonsense, he should be belted for it, metaphorically. When you've got something like Bernard Finn standing against the police, it shows you've got a problem. And he's very critical of the police. I think that's madness. We have to rely on the police. We have to support them. Of course, analyse them and criticise them, but they're standing between us and a bunch of absolute thugs who thought it was legitimate to stand on the steps of a war memorial, piss in the corners, and desecrate it. Just think about that. And then have the nerve to say, our forefathers who went to war would have done this. Rubbish, they would have done this.
How significant is it, the police banning news helicopters over the city?
I don't think most people would care. I don't think the public would care. I think it's symbolic, and I think it was mucked up. I think Shane Patton admitted that to you today. Somebody on the ground has said, "Oh, look, we'll ban the helicopters." All you got to do is ring the media and say, "Hey guys, needs to be done for these reasons." We've all done it before. We've all backed away from things and live coverage of sieges and the rest. I think it was mishandled. I think it's reasonable to say, okay, look, we're having some trouble here. Can you at least delay putting that to air? Now, it undermines the live coverage, but there's a bigger benefit here. And I think the public could generally say, well, too bad for the media. I think the police mishandled it, and it was symbolically awful. In the middle of a time we're losing civil liberties, to have the media being controlled is a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't disagree that it's, sort of neither here nor there for most of the public, but, I mean, it does go to the very heart of this argument about us becoming a police state, doesn't it?
We gave up our civil liberties a long time ago. And you can't go out at night. You can't have people in your house. You can't walk down the street without a mask. We gave it up because we need to get on top of this thing, and we will get on top of it. Yeah, of course. Control of the media is an awful, awful thing to do. And I'm sure there are some in governments around the world and around this country who'd think it'd be terrific if they could control the media. But you can't do it, and you won't do it. But this is a bit of a sideshow, and I think it'll move on.
Jane, say hello to Neil Mitchell.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Jane. Yes,
Hi,
Jane.
how are you? Look, I'm a mother of 4 children. Obviously, we've been through it all in the last couple of years. It's really, really concerning, particularly the riot. So my mum was sort of caught up a little bit with it on the other day on the West Gate. So
Oh, dear.
the kids are aware of it. But just, I suppose, my concern is that it's been going on for so long, the lockdown, kids out of school, and I just am really worried about where it's going to end up, really worried for the kids.
I think everybody is, Jane, that's a fair thing. Everybody is worried. Everybody is sick of it. Well, I saw one of the construction workers saying today, "Oh, what are we supposed to do, 2 weeks without wages?" Well, welcome to the real bloody world. Most people have been living in that situation for 18 months, or a lot of people have. We all want it over, but it can't just be over. We have to do things to get it over. We have to do things to get through it. We have to have that pathway. And venting the frustration by getting on the streets and doing the sort of things that we've seen isn't going to help at all. In fact, it potentially makes it worse, and it undermines the sort of confidence of the whole society. That's what worries me. Hey, if your mum was caught in the middle of it, this is something interesting, Tony. I've did the Springbok demonstrations in the early 70s as a reporter. I've been to anti-Vietnam demonstrations. I've been to all manner of demonstrations. I've even been to Extinction Rebellion more recently, anti-conscription demonstrations.
Oh, remember the ports?
Yeah, I nearly got slaughtered at the ports. Surrounded by an angry crowd spitting at me. But I have never before seen demonstrators target the public. Now, that woman on the Westgate Bridge, jumping on the bonnet of her car, she's terrified and screaming, and they go and spit at her through the window. These are just bloody thugs. I mean, that's disgraceful, that sort of behaviour. And anybody who's capable of that is not interested in the rights or decency or concerns of other people. If you can do that to a member of the public who just happens to be driving along Westgate, you're capable of anything.
Neil, we're hearing that the Premier might speak today. We don't know at what stage. I think Daniel Andrews needs to do almost like an address to the nation, but obviously it would be with Victoria, like we see from the Oval Office. Now, I'm not trying to overplay this or anything, but I think the situation is so dire at the moment that he needs to cut all the crap and the lecturing and the syrupy little slogans that he comes out with on a daily basis, or almost daily basis, and actually just sit down and talk to the people. Surely he needs to do something like that, doesn't he, to break away from the usual deadpan type of monologue that he goes on with?
Well, I hope he's capable of it, because that's exactly what he should do. But don't forget, this man's career is politics, and maybe he has lost that touch with reality in talking to real people. I hope not. I hope he can do it. He needs to appeal for calm, for common sense, and appeal to the decency of Victorians that I keep referring to. It is there. The vast majority are decent and determined to get somewhere with this, and we are the only people that can get us through it. He's not going to get us through it. All right, he can put policies in place, but if we're going to get through this, it has to be by our efforts. There's no question about that. I think he's got to appeal to that. I think he should go further. Who knows what John Setka's contacts are now within this group, but he should sit down personally with John Setka and say, what can we do? How do we reach him? What do we do about it? How do we settle it? How do we take the heat out of it? I think you've got to I think, as I say, we're heading in probably the worst 6 to 12 months in Victoria's history, the toughest time, and we're on the verge of it now. We've got to get this right. We have to settle it. We have to return that community sense of unity and determination. We had it last year. Let's get it back.
Well, look, you're showing a fair bit of potential for this Caper, Neil, so I wouldn't mind chatting again tomorrow if we could, but maybe we might talk football.
Yeah, that's sad, isn't it? Forgotten the footy. I was talking to a federal minister last night who said, we could get people out to march for decency. And, of course, people would turn up. You can't do that. So we've got to find a way to harness that I hate the term silent majority, harness that decent majority and say, how do we get them on side? How do we get them making a point? I think the guerrillas on the streets, some of them are beyond logic. Not all of them. Some of them are beyond logic. But somehow we have to assert the decency. We've got this division long term, but we've got to get through it. There's no option.
Okay, chat tomorrow.
Maybe.
Good on you, Neil Mitchell there, the host of 3AW Mornings, as he has been for more than 30 years now, setting the agenda. And, we need someone to do it, don't we, because we're not getting it from Spring Street.